Hi, Bill Yannick here, Connect FM CEO. Welcome to the Daily Grind. Today on the Daily Grind, we're going to talk building automation systems and how those systems can help our FMs attain ESG goals. And our subject matter expert today and guest is Mike Smith. He's Director of Sales at Facility Solutions Group. Mike, welcome to the Daily Grind.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, as we get started here, maybe a little bit more of an intro about what you do at Facility Solutions Group.
Yeah, so Facility Solutions Group, 40-year company here in the United States. We've got over 2,000 employees focused in over 30 markets nationwide. We work in Canada as well, but we're focused on lighting retrofits, energy sustainability, all the things that I think matter to the people that are going to be listening to this show today. And here in Round Rock, Texas, we have our Smart Buildings division, which is what I'm the Director of Sales for that group, and we're focused on building automation and IoT and energy management and all the stuff that people that are concerned about ESG and sustainability are going to want to hear about.
Oh, great. Well, let's start with something that might be easy for our FMs to look at. ESG can be scary. Building automation systems can be scary, but I'm sure there's some low-hanging fruit out there. So let's get started with what are your thoughts or maybe some initial recommendations to our FMs out there of that low-hanging fruit?
So I think probably the absolute lowest hanging fruit, Bill, the thing that most people could get their hands around very easily is lighting retrofits, going from fluorescents to LEDs. I think most people are already aware of that and probably in the process of doing that. But if they're not, that is a very high return on your investment, very simple process, very easy, like you said, low hanging fruit to go ahead and grab. The next thing I would say, Bill, beyond that would be HVAC control, because HVAC is the highest consumer of energy in our buildings, in our commercial buildings. Mm-hmm. And we've got to be able to, the key ways to do that, Bill, are by either controlling the set points or putting a schedule on these things, right? There's no reason for that store, that building to be running 74 degrees at midnight when they closed at 8 p.m., right? Yeah. So let's set those things back. That's just wasted energy. And then, yeah, if we can take a store that was running at 70 degrees cooling and move it to 72 or 74, that represents substantial savings as well.
Well, and maybe not so low-hanging fruit. Now we can move into talking about, and hopefully under whether it's ESG or sustainability, that reducing spend isn't the be-all end-all, but we know oftentimes that's the initial case to be made. So how can building automation systems impact or reduce spend?
So there's basically two ways, Bill. One is through the simple energy savings that we drive by taking control and automating schedules and set points on HVAC or even lighting, right? So we've all driven by stores or buildings that have been closed for hours in the middle of the night, and yet every single light in that store is on. There's no reason for that. It's just a matter of somebody forgot to turn the lights off. Let's automate that process so that when the last person out arms that security building or security system for the building, it sends a signal to the building automation system to say, hey, the building's armed, there's nobody inside, turn the lights off. Mm-hmm. And there's other ways to do that as well, right? We can do it with time clocks and with schedules around controllers. We can do it with photo cells. But my personal favorite is use the internet, use an astro clock. It knows exactly where that store is. It doesn't require a technician to go out when we have a change in daylight savings time, or if there's a power failure that stops the time clock from timing properly and now it's out of sync. An astro clock is always going to know exactly what time the sun rose and exactly what time the sun set, and it's going to give you an offset on either side of those times to turn those lights on and off for exterior lights. So the other way, Bill, is we would call it operational savings. When you have a building automation system, it typically means you're not just controlling equipment in the store, but you're also monitoring and you're able to see it remotely. When you can see what's happening in your store with your lighting or your HVAC equipment or your cooking equipment, refrigeration, whatever it is, when you can see that remotely, that means you can also set up alarm notifications. And you can have the store proactively telling you, hey, I have a problem. You should probably look at me. It's the middle of the night. Somebody left my freezer door open and I'm getting warm, and we're going to lose a bunch of food if we don't have somebody come and close this door and fix this problem. So proactive alarms, we call that operational savings, when the store can tell us remotely that there's a problem, and we can either one, sends a technician out there to address that problem before it goes from just being a small problem to a very big problem, costly problem.
Mhm.
Or ideally, what we love to do is fix that problem remotely so we don't even have to roll a truck out there.
Interesting. Okay, so now maybe even so we went from the low hanging fruit, maybe the medium, now the tough stuff, and we have federal data from the EIA that tells us constantly that heating and cooling in commercial buildings is a huge spend. How can building automation systems, or what are your thoughts on how to impact that element as well?
Well, I kind of touched on a little bit before, right? We know that HVAC is the big spend in commercial buildings. It's really as simple as, in the biggest, we call low hanging fruit, but the biggest bang for your buck, return on your investment, is in set points and schedules. That's where the meat of your savings are going to come. So moving from 70 degrees cooling to 74 degrees cooling, huge savings there. Okay. Taking a schedule and a store that was running 24/7 at 70 degrees cooling, and moving it to what we call like a night setback, where, hey, you're closing, go ahead and change from 70 to 80 and run those 10 hours that you're closed at 80 degrees instead of 70 degrees. Again, another huge source of savings. There's, of course, all sorts of things on top of that you can do. There's more what we call maybe advanced energy savings techniques, things like um, peak demand, load shedding. We have something called optimized start and optimized start that we like to do in the building automation industry. Optimized start is simply using the smarts of the system in an algorithm to say, hey, the outside air temperature is this, my space temperature is this, and I know that yesterday, under those same conditions, it took me 30 minutes to go from my unoccupied set point of 80 degrees down to my occupied set point of 74. So I can go ahead and assume today that it's going to take 30 minutes, and I'll start 30 minutes early. We call that optimized start, as opposed to what a lot of FMs would do is they'd say, well, my store opens at 10. I don't really know how long it's going to take to cool down, so I better turn the HVAC on at 8.
Mm-hmm.
And if they only needed it to come on at 9:30, there's an hour and a half of wasted energy.
Interesting stuff. Okay, so we've talked how buildings are, I guess, lit, and whether they're hot or cold at the right times. Indoor air quality is also it's a quality of life thing. It impacts the workforce. So how can FMs positively impact the indoor air quality?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everything we've talked to up until now has been all about the sustainability piece, the environmental of the ESG. This starts to touch on the social side, right? Where we're, as employees and employers, we're concerned about human health and safety. We're concerned about comfort of our employees and our customers. These are things that really matter. And so when it comes to things like the social side of this, and the air quality is a big one. And so it's one of those things where in order to do something, Bill, you have to know what you're dealing with, right? You got to collect the data first. Building automation systems allow you to measure and to know quantitatively what's going on in your facility. So I can put a CO2 sensor in there. I can put a humidity sensor in there. I've got a thermostat that's connected to the cloud, and it's telling me in real time what my space temperature is. Well, when I can combine those kinds of metrics, right? My air quality and CO2, my temperature, my humidity, the CO2 piece is big for safety. Like I need to watch that and know if the CO2 levels climb too high, I'm going to have to do something about that. I'm going to have to bring in fresh air somehow. Well, building automation system puts both of those together. It measures it, and then it can address a problem by opening up the outside air dampers and bringing in more fresh air, right? Um, Same thing that we see with humidity, right? Humidity is more of a comfort issue. It's not necessarily a safety concern, but from a comfort perspective, as an employee working in that store, in that facility for hours upon time, they need that comfort factor, and the BAS can monitor that humidity level and then do things to address and try to adjust for that humidity as well. And of course, temperature is all part of that. The two work hand in hand, temperature and humidity. The more humid it is, the cooler people are going to feel like it's hotter than it really is. So we need to play with those two factors to make sure that we're providing comfort in that store.
Awesome. Well, you've probably already alluded to this, but before we end the interview, let's talk maybe about the types of buildings that are the best candidates for building automation systems, or the types of impacts you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of different building types, obviously, but surprising, I think, to most people to learn that 90% of the commercial buildings in the United States are 50,000 square feet and less. They're not very big buildings. These are smaller buildings, and they're buildings that are in the small to medium box retail vertical. They're in maybe C-store, convenience stores, quick serve restaurants, other sit-down restaurants. Those kinds of buildings make up a very large percentage of the commercial buildings. And what's interesting is, according to a study by the DOE back in 2012, only 10, or I think it was 12% of those commercial buildings in the United States have some sort of a building automation system in them. Wow. So the opportunity is I mean, huge, right?
Fascinating stuff. And yeah, I would have never, well, you don't think about building automation systems enough, but that percentage is way too low. And hopefully, I'm sure your company is looking at improving that number, and really appreciate your insights, Mike. And for our audience out there, we're here on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 Central, or on demand all the time at connexfm.com. It's your daily grind. Have a good one.